Hello and welcome to the VST Weekly Roundup. We just finished up week 6. I think it was week 7. Someone correct me here. But it's okay. It's 7. Yes, because it's a 10-week season. It's right in front of me and I don't see it, but that's okay because we're just going to roll. There's a lot of amazing football and a little bit of head scratching going on this far into the season. Without further ado, I'm going to just roll in. As always, with me is Kenny Hodges and Kaylie Harden. Kaylie, how are you?
You know what? I am happy to have seen 2 teams in the Valley that I haven't covered a full game for yet. So I'm doing great because I'm actually getting to move around and get to see some other teams play some great games aside from my darlings, Birmingham and Granada.
And Kenny, how you doing?
Man, listen, you know what I say. Any week we get to cover this great game, we cover these kids here in the Valley. It's a good time to me, and I can't wait to talk about everything we saw. Man, we had some juicy things that kind of transported, that kind of setting us up for a really good stretch run. I'm ready to get into it.
And let's roll. So we'll start out west in the West Valley. Granada Hills went into Cleveland and put up a bit of a number. It was a 40-21 final there. Birmingham went to Chatsworth and did what Birmingham's been doing so far. It was a 58-7 finish there. And Elko went to Taft. El Camino came out on top in this one. It was 37-32. That's going to be interesting. We'll go more in depth on that one in a little bit. And then in the East Valley, Arleta beat up on Grant a little bit. It was 49-21. Monroe stunned North Hollywood for the second year in a row. It was 20-14 there. And then Chavez humbled Verdugo Hills. It was 44-6. Kenny might have a few thoughts on that. And then in the Valley Mission, Kennedy beat Canoga. I'm running out of ways to say it, but this team is rebuilding. It was 50-0. And then Van Nuys went into Reseda, blew a lead, came back and won. It was a 28-14 finish there. They spoiled homecoming, something Kenny used to love to do. And our game of the week, San Fernando came out on top of Sylmar. It was a 14-6 final. That game has an interesting story, and we'll go in depth on that when we get to our game of the week section. Now, over in the southern section, there were blowouts all over the board and a couple of nail biters. Village Christian, they're all in league play now. So Village Christian stomped on Big Barrows 58-6. Heritage had a fairly close game with Aquinas. It was 39-28. Aquinas on top. Sierra Canyon doing it again, adding another sport to their dominance. They beat Bishop Lamont 56-14. Notre Dame dropped one to Sarah. It was 35-45. Chaminade beat up on Alamany. It was 55-14. And then back in the public school section, Crescenta Valley on top of Burbank. It was a 34-14 final. Burroughs edged out Muir. It was 32-27. Hoover came out on top over Temple City, 34-27. And Glendale dropped one to Rowland, 41-26. That's the rundown of all the games. Kenny's got some news and notes.
Yes, we'll start in the East Valley. The East Valley League is starting to take shape a bit. Chavez did what you wanted to see them do. They dropped the game that they should have won the week before at Monroe. Credit goes to Monroe for how they played on senior night. But Chavez did what you wanted to see, a team that has postseason aspirations, league championship aspirations. They didn't let the opportunity slip, and they made a statement. They came out angry. They put a number on Verdugo, and it sets them up for a big one this week at our leader, who also handled business, did what they needed to do, as they've done all season long, as they've done in the East Valley so far in league play. They beat up on Grant. Like I said, Grant is one of those teams you look at. There's an eye to the future with that team. They were young this year. Stacilius wanted to see this team compete. He was frustrated with them for a good part of the year, but we've started to see them compete a little better. We started to see a little bit of consistency, but they're just not there on that level to compete with some of these more senior-laden veteran squads that they're running into, and the final score in that game proved it. And break up Monroe. Hey, listen, the seniors woke up. This team won the East Valley last year. Yes, they graduated some pieces, but they still had some dogs from that team last year still here. And as we've seen the last couple of weeks, as now they've beaten Monroe, as they've beaten North Hollywood on back-to-back years now, they've shown that there's still some fight there. They've shown that this is a team that could be dangerous depending on where they end up when we get into the postseason. So we'll see what goes on with them. North Hollywood, we know the story with North Hollywood this year. They have been battling depth issues, injury issues, which has sort of led to the inconsistency, even though this was a team that, had aspirations of kind of finishing the deal and being so close to winning the championship last year. They're still trying to figure some things out, but there's still a lot of talent there. Jalen Burt's still there. They still have the ability when they get to postseason. They can make some noise too when they get there. Moving to the Valley Mission. Again, Kennedy did what you're supposed to do against a team like Canoga. Canoga's seen better days, but Lucius Mills will get that thing up and running, but he is playing with a baby squad this year. They graduated a lot of talent, and they are starting from scratch. They have quite a few. I know for a fact this team has freshmen in their lineup that are getting playing time, and that is tough to do on the varsity level. Check back in with this team next year and 2 years from now. They might be in a position to really make some noise against some people. We'll get into the Sylmar San Fernando game. It was the game of the week. It was a close game. Both teams showed that they had quality, especially defensively in this game. But we'll get into that. There's some real talking points coming out of that ball game. And Van Nuys and Reseda, again, Austin Ward has got these kids playing hard every week. They're not there just yet. They had a real opportunity to steal a game in the Valley Mission, fighting back hard. It was what you want to see a young team that's build and do, but they just weren't able to hold it in the end. And Van Nuys picks up a key win, a win they needed, because it's a game that now puts them back on that bubble of being able to get into that D3 bracket when the postseason rolls around. It was a win that they needed to. It was a win they needed to put in their pocket if they want to be able to kind of sneak in and get into the postseason. In the West Valley, what can you say? If you follow if you follow Granada and Cleveland on social media, you know the subliminal smack talk that was going on all week, and a lot of the smack talk that was talked about that went down after the game was over. A friendly rivalry, if you will, because we know that Darrell Stanley and Corey Hall and the likes, these are all Valley Rush. If you know the Valley Rush, these are kids that all play together. So it means a little bit more when they play each other. And unfortunately, Cleveland wasn't able to get it done this year. Granada takes the win. They get back on the horse after a tough win, lost the week before. We'll see if they can keep that going in the West Valley the rest of the way. Birmingham and Chatsworth, the story of that game, as I wrote in the gyms, would be, could Chatsworth move the ball against that Birmingham front? We know all the attention for Birmingham was going to be on Isaiah Rameau, and they did what they do. They shut him down. They play tough up front. The Tongan kids are tough to deal with when you're trying to move the ball and run the ball on Birmingham. And a special shout out to Kingston Tisdale. He got benched the week before. He did exactly what I hoped he would do, which was he didn't pout. He got back. He got his opportunity to get back in there, and he played well. I don't think he had an incompletion in that game against Chatsworth. He did what he needed to do. Birmingham continues the roll. Elko and Taft, Kaylie will get into it. Maybe the wildest game of the weekend, especially in the city section on our end. These two teams showed that they had some quality. They also showed that they had some inconsistency, but it was a fun one. And Elko continues to roll after a tough start to the year. They're 2-0 in the West Valley, and we'll get into that game a little more. And just some quick notes on the southern section. Village did what they needed to do. They went and put a big number on Big Bear. It was something you wanted to see them do because they have got a huge one. Might make the gyms this week. Well, no, we'll see. They got a huge one with Ontario Christian as they kind of look forward going this week. Heritage had a tough time. They played tough against Aquinas, but they're in a stage where they got to figure some things out as they head towards the Bible Bowl in a couple of weeks. Sierra Canyon, what can we say? This team is the real deal. They're a top 20 team in the country for a reason, not just here in the state, but they're a top 20 program in the country for a reason because that defense is for real. And if you can keep Bishop Amat to 14 points in a game, that's saying something. They're going to make some noise. I don't know if anybody's going to be able to touch them in the mission, and then we'll see what they can do because they're going to be in a tough bracket when they get to the postseason, Sierra Canyon. And that kind of wraps up my news and notes. It was good to see CV continue to keep it rolling. They're doing it. They're doing their thing out there. And that's what I got from news and notes this week.
All right. Yeah, there was definitely some fun stuff. Real quick before we jump into some more in-depth, I actually had a few observations. I wasn't able to get out to any games this weekend, and tried to catch them as I could. So I do have a few quick takeaways. Reseda Van Nuys, that game, from what I was able to watch, was a slugfest, kind of in the trenches. Both teams were tripping each other up and making their own mistakes at the same time. Both programs are learning and growing. I saw enough positive from both sides that I'm excited about what they're doing with their programs. I've been excited about what Austin Ward is doing since he came on last year. This new regime in Van Nuys really has these kids bought in. I'm excited for them. And I mean, ultimately, these teams are looking to put it together. And watch out if they get into D3, they could stun somebody and surprise them. And especially after watching this, both teams have enough weapons to surprise somebody in that D3 bracket and maybe go on a bit of a run.
Before you move on, there's a name on Reseda because it's been a tough year for them. But there's a kid that I've watched a few of their games now, and this kid pops on tape. And it's number 44, Isaac Pineda. This kid has sort of been the rock of this team all season, and he was spectacular in this game against Van Nuys. And sometimes you want to give flowers to kids. He's a senior. You want to give flowers to kids who have kind of stayed the course, tried to carry a program, tried to be a leader of the program that's struggling. And obviously, he's not going to get a lot of attention when the team is 0-8. But when you watch them play, that kid is the leader. He's the kid that's flying around making plays, and he was flying around in that Van Nuys game. I just wanted to mention his name. I wanted to mention Isaac Pineda, number 44. We see you, big dog. Keep working, keep grinding. It's been a tough season, but we're watching, and we see what you're doing out there.
Yeah, no, definitely. He's an anchor on that team, both on the field and off, and that's exciting to see that he was one of the kids who stayed the course. The Taft and El Camino game, before we get in depth, it's kind of what we've come to expect from these two teams. They'll go on a bit of a run, shoot themselves in the foot a couple times, and then they've got a rebound, and game goes down to the wire. It was definitely fun to watch. Definitely fun to watch. I like that a lot. And those are the ones that I was kind of able to get a piece of. But we're going to go in depth, and we'll throw it first to Kaylie. She was at Taft for this one. Kaylie, what do you got?
So I was very excited to see Taft play for the first time. I actually didn't get to see them at all last year. So this is the first time I've gotten to see their football team. I covered their basketball team a bit in the winter. But anyways, it was fun to be there. The facilities are amazing. And I was also really excited to see Elko again, because after what I saw at their homecoming game, I knew it was going to be a show. After hearing Kenny talk so highly of Taft this year, I knew it was going to be a good game going into it. So for the first quarter of the game, Taft comes out really strong. They started the game off 0-14. They had two big touchdowns in the first quarter by Eric Coran and Ledgers Wilson. But then in the second quarter, you could tell things started to unravel a little bit. They started making really sloppy offensive mistakes in the second. Luckily, their defense was able to hold up and keep Elko at bay. Jake Shirley wanted it, and he was ready to outplay Taft's entire defense. So in the second quarter, Elko is able to close the gap a little bit. They get a touchdown and a field goal. Or a touchdown and extra point, my bad. They are able to bring the gap up to 7-14. And then when they punt the ball back to Taft drops it, and Elko recovers it again. So that's just lends itself more to how you can see how Taft is starting to unravel here. They pick it back up a little bit. They start the second half of the game with a touchdown by Lior Lesham, and then Jalen Sanders responds with another immediate touchdown for Elko. And then they ramp it up a little bit to try to close that gap even more. They get a conversion by Kevin Hawkins. Then Taft fumbles the punt return again. Elko's able to recover it again, but then as soon as they get the ball back, they throw an interception to Taft. So now you see both offenses kind of starting to just make sloppy mistakes, which we've seen them both do in the past. They're both young. They're both younger teams as far as either the program goes or just their talent. So there's a little bit of inconsistency starting to really reveal themselves here. But Taft is able to, pick it up. They get another touchdown. And then they are actually able to recover a fumble by Elko late in the third quarter. But the third quarter ends very, very close. We've got the game to 23-25. Taft is still up. And both teams are making horribly sloppy mistakes on offense, but it seems like they're almost playing hot potato with the ball, because we've got punt returns that are being fumbled and then recovered and then immediate interceptions thrown. And it's like, do you guys want to touch the football or not? So luckily though for Elko, Jake Shirley, like I said, he was ready to outplay Taft's entire defense. If both offensive programs were going to be messing up as much as they were, Jake Shirley was coming in to save the day, which is extra special, which I'll get into later, because of the day that it was. But okay, so the fourth quarter starts off. We have an interception by Jalen Sanders, which is number one for Elko. But then the ball is immediately fumbled back to Taft. Taft is able to score again and get an extra point. So now the score is 32-23. They're up, but then we get another score by Jalen Sanders. He's able to close the gap to 30-32. Taft is unable to complete the passes when they get the ball back. So now we're getting late into the fourth quarter. It's about 2.5 minutes left. Taft starts, first of all, Elko has the ball at this point. Taft starts blaring, which they've been quiet the whole game. This is their homecoming game. Their student section is not loud. You can hear from the Taft sideline the Elko kids screaming with whatever little Bose speaker they have and just creating a roar and a ruckus at a stadium that is not theirs and a homecoming game that, again, is not theirs. But at this point in the game, when Elko has the ball, there's 2.5 minutes left, and they're only up by 2. Taft decides that they're going to blare Eye of the Tiger over the speakers. So really setting the scene here. But anyway, I thought that was kind of funny. So it's 4th and short. They're able to complete some passes down the field. They're able to wind the clock down to only a minute left. It's 4th and short, and there's a dog pile. Elko gets the first down, and then they have another really critical complete pass. At this point, there's only 18 seconds left, though, because they've been trying to run the clock. At this point, I'm thinking, you're only down by 2. Why not just kick the field goal? And there's penalties being called during this time, too. So we're seeing the ball move back 5, up 15, back 15. And I'm thinking to myself, as they keep lining up over and over again, why do they not just kick the field goal? And this was the sentiment that we saw the week before from Chatsworth when they were so close to winning. And why don't you just kick the field goal and put it away? Because there's 18 seconds left. Taft is not going to run the ball all the way back down the field and get a touchdown. You could secure it with a field goal. But no, they want to make it. They really want to make it a show. They get their. If this was a televised game, the ratings would have been way up. I promise you. Coming from a broadcasting background, they would have made whoever broadcasted this game would have made bank. But anyway, so they don't kick the field goal. We've got a touchdown by Dan Coulter, and that's what actually put the game away. And on Jake Shirley's birthday, which is what I was referencing earlier about how special this day was, on Jake Shirley's birthday, Elko walked away with the 818 trophy.
There's a few things that sort of stood out to me. One, Kevin Hawkins, this Elko quarterback, you're seeing it every week. Yes, he is raw. He makes a lot of mistakes. He does things sometimes where it's like, oh God, kid, just throw the ball away. Or like, oh, you're just running around. Like, just, you don't. But it's something to be said for him being a sophomore and being cool. Cool is the other side of the pillow out there. Like, it doesn't feel like he's frazzled. It just feels like he's figuring things out on the fly. And maybe he's almost a little bit too cool at times. And it's like, okay, you gotta take better care of the ball. You gotta, know when to get out of bounds. Don't take unnecessary hits, because as a quarterback, you can't help the team if you get banged up. And there were a few times where he's stiff arming and trying to extend the play, and it's like, bro, you gotta get out of bounds. But you can see this kid has unlimited potential. He's gigantic. Like, he is a massive human being, which you would love to have at that position. He's talented. He can move the ball with his legs, but he has a cannon of an arm as well. And on the other side, when looking at a young player, Legend Wilson, is a guy that coming into the year, Fred Emerson told me, he's like, hey, this kid's a star. Watch him, watch what he does. And you saw it. He had a long touchdown where he catches the ball and just pulls away from the defense. Like, he is the future of that program. He's a junior. He'll be back next year. He'll be the guy. The problem with him right now is he has to mature into his destiny in a lot of ways, in terms of what this team is going to need from him next year. And he's got time to figure some things out, because one of the things that stood out to me at times when I've watched him is there are times when the team sort of needs him to be in a better place with his focus, and he's just not there at times. It's a tough back and forth game. He caught the long touchdown, but then he has this really weird, unsportsmanlike penalty. He gets an end zone where he's holding the ball out to the Elko kid, and it's almost as if he was wanting the referees to give him a penalty. And they did. They eventually flagged him. I feel like the referees didn't want to, but because he went on with holding the ball out for so long, that they eventually sort of flagged him. And now you're putting your team behind the 8 ball, because now they're kicking from 15 yards further. Elko's getting the ball in better field position. You're setting them up for a drive. These are things that, as a young player, you got to understand. You can't hurt your team that way. And it's those things that he has to sort of mature. And he's got time, because they're going to need him to mature, because he's going to be the X factor. He's going to be the guy next year. It's not his team now, but next year when Devin Conroy's gone and Leo Lesham are gone, like, he's going to be the guy. So he's going to have to grow up a bit and kind of grow into what they need him to do.
Yeah, and watching these two teams play against each other, they really remind me of just being two different sides of the same coin, because the mistakes that they make are very similar. Just like how you said, how we're getting unsportsmanlike penalties for trying to celebrate in the end zone. The same thing was happening with the Elko kids. The
Oh yeah,
Elko kids
Deion
would come
Coulter.
back and
Deion
close the
Coulter
gap
is
and then do some like ball spin or some kind of celebration, and the refs were on them too. The difference, I think, in these two teams and how they carry themselves, it's not necessarily even a matter of like one team is more mature than the other. I think it ultimately just comes down to the vibe of the team. Because on one side of the field, you got a coach with an iced out whistle. And then on the other side, you've got a coach in flip flops. So they're just, the vibes are completely different. But essentially, the result that you get is a very, very fair matchup and very comparable teams that you're working with. And that's why I think that's why the game was so good this week.
And styles make fights, right? One of the things that I loved, because coming out of the Taft Cleveland game, it felt as if one side of the Cleveland side felt like Taft were agitators, that they were like, oh, this guy's talking junk on social media, they're doing all of this, they're big for their britches. But especially if you watch the LA 36 broadcast, when the two coaches when one coach is essentially interviewing the other one in the pregame, you could see that the vibe. I think Elko understands what Taft is trying to do, because they're both sort of in the same place of like, hey, we both are trying to topple that mountain that is Birmingham, and I'm gonna go about it my way with my program. You're gonna go about it your way with your program. We both have difficulties. I don't have a doggone field still. I think they're just now getting ready to, in the next couple of weeks, hopefully dig up the old field so they can start laying a new one. Taft is sort of kind of trying to rebuild something, a mystique that was been gone for years, and now trying to build some consistency in that program. And you saw these two coaches in the pregame like, hey, we don't have a problem with you doing. If anything, it brings excitement to this rivalry, why it was so important for them to have the 101 trophy and play for this and make the 101 rivalry feel like something. So to me, I love the fact that these coaches sort of had appreciation for each other and the love for what they were trying to do. And yeah, Kaylie's right. Taft and Elko are going to be two different programs in terms of how they're building this thing. Like I said, there's a reason why they're starting to call Emerson Little Coach Prime over there, because that's definitely the vibe he's coming with. And that's fine. Like I said, as long as it's respectful, we want to see more personality, because that's what drives eyes to what they're doing. But there are two guys to me that came out of this game, one on each side, that are going to be X factors for these teams if they're going to do something this year and sort of setting the tone moving forward. Jalen Sanders is such a spectacular athlete for Elko. Obviously, Jake Shirley we know he's the guy. We know that those are the guys that you're going to key on. And to give Taft credit, they had an excellent game plan in the first half. They were using Dakota Garner, their really talented safety, and they were using him to shadow Jake Shirley and making life difficult for Jake Shirley in the first half. Everywhere Jake Shirley went, that safety was following him. But here's the thing. If the safety's following the tight end, then that's opening space. Is sort of it's a double-edged sword. If the safety's going to vacate the middle of the field because he's trying to stop their tight end, there's room there for someone else to be a playmaker. Now, part of it is Kevin Hawkins kind of grows in a position and understands he has to spread the ball around. But as soon as they started getting the ball to Jalen Sanders and he started making plays, now Taft's defense can't just key on Jake Shirley, because they have to be worried about what's going on in the middle of the field with number one getting open. And then all of a sudden, Jake Shirley started finding room to operate, because now you're taking Jake Shirley, who's 6'2", 190, and runs like a damn gazelle, on any team's linebackers, and it's a mismatch.
Yeah.
Going
Everything you said is absolutely right, because even being on the sideline, you could tell that Taft, just by the way they were talking, and I hope I'm not like revealing anything too much, but just by the way that they were talking on the sideline, you could tell that the majority of their attack plan was based around stopping Jake Shirley. Unbeknownst to them, they had other weapons in their back pocket.
But the thing about Elko, and that's the thing, the same with Birmingham, same with any team with a good defense, they know the first key to Elko is you stop number 5 and you make things difficult for Elko, because they want to get that ball to him. Kevin Hawkins is a sophomore. You damn right you should be going to that tight end who catches everything, who can outrun everybody. He's too fast for linebackers. He's too big for DBs. Yes, that's who you want your young quarterback to rely on. And Jake Shirley probably comes to the huddle every play and says, "Bro, throw it to me. I don't care. Throw it to me." But when you have, obviously, Deion Coulter had 2 touchdowns. He's a weapon as well. But Jalen Sanders is the kind of athlete that can take you from your 20 to the other team's 20 in a blink.
And he's a senior as well. So he's been with that program and has been developing with that team. So it's no surprise that he would, rise to the occasion when we've got double teams on Jake Shirley.
So they gotta feed that beast as well. Having that sort of balance on their offense, and then guess what happened? Once you started getting the ball to number 1, and then you start feeding number 5, that little running back Melee started finding room because now the defense is not loading the box because they're so worried about these outside weapons that they will find a room to run the ball. That's where they will find success. They can make a deep postseason run if they can find that sort of balance in their offense with that young quarterback. On the Taft side, Darius Taylor, the junior linebacker, he has, if there's any guy that you can look at and say, now saying someone is Micah Parsons is obviously waxing hyperbole, but in terms of what he could do for Taft's defense, what he can do for Taft defensively in terms of, and you saw it in this game, he had 7 tackles, he had a sack. This kid was everywhere. He can run with wide receivers. He can blow past edges. He can blow past your tackles. This kid is going to be special, and I don't even think he's already special, and I don't think he even understands how special he is at this point. If he can continue to play this way for Taft and sort of kind of bolster that defense, and Taft can figure out how to use him in different places and allow him to sort of be a game wrecker, he could be a real X factor in what they want to do the rest of the season to go along with other pieces on that defense like Dakota Connor and that good corner Amir Dudd and Elijah Albert, EA, and what he brings, and he anchors that defensive front. Darius Taylor is a real X factor, and it's exciting. There's a lot of talent in the West Valley that don't exist on Granada and Birmingham, on some of these other teams that are chasing them. And as soon as these kids sort of figure out how special they are, man, this league is really going to be a gauntlet, and it won't be just an afterthought that Birmingham and Granada are going to be sitting 1 and 2, because Elko and Taft, even beyond their seniors, are loaded, and they are going to be coming for these teams at the top of the West Valley.
I mean, I'm excited. And we've talked off air numerous times about watching these different programs kind of figure it out, right? Even if the coach knows what he's, and the coach has his plan, what has to happen is it has to click.
The kids have to buy into the program. And
you need it to click on all levels. And you can see it kind of, we can connect the dots. And that's just so exciting looking around. And not just there, but there's programs where we're scratching our heads like, why aren't these dots connecting?
Yeah.
If these dots connected, this team, would be contending for their league or be in a higher playoff division. And then we see them connecting in other schools, and it's exciting for us because that's what we want to see.
Yeah. And aside, take Birmingham and Granada, put them aside from the equation for a second. We've only got a couple weeks left, and we still have to see Chatsworth play Taft. We still have to see Cleveland play Elko. There's still very exciting, definitive, and characterizing games left to be played.
Yeah. Panorama still has to face their 2 foes in the Valley Mission. And that's going to be insane because they're kind of the one who's setting the stage right now. And in the East Valley, is Arleta going to run the table? Did it click are they back? So there's all these questions that we have 3 weeks left to answer. And it's just utterly exciting, and just love to see these kids starting to figure it out. But without pushing anymore, the game of the week was a Valley Mission contest, Sylmar San Fernando, 1-score finish, and it could have been a 1-score finish the other way. And it is definitely something that we've got a lot to say about. So, Kenny, you were focusing a little bit on that one. I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, Sylmar San Fernando was a game. It was our game of the week. And because we sort of penciled this game, and we knew just based on how these two teams are built, how these two teams play, that this had potential to be high drama because of what was on the line. Sylmar obviously is a little further back. They would have, even with a win, they need a lot of things to happen for them to win the Valley Mission. But still, even beyond that, the idea is you still want to win every game you go out there and play. It's still a rivalry game. It's a game that means something to the community, and the turnout for both teams sort of told you as such. It was intense right from the outset. There was a noise battle at the beginning of the game where each side was trying to see if they could be louder than the other, and you could tell the kids sort of fed off of it. Now, before I sort of get into how the game played out, let's get the elephant in the room out of the way. I am never one to come on here and beat up on referees or speak ill of referees, because they're doing yeoman's work. You don't get paid. You're not getting paid a ton of money to ref these games, but it's a necessary thing that we need. You need refs out here to sort of maintain the health and safety and of these kids. But I gotta say, sometimes it is okay to swallow your whistle for the sake of continuity and rhythm in a football game. Sylmar started the game with an 11-minute drive that felt like 30 to 35 minutes of actual real time if you were watching the game. They had the ball almost the entire duration of the first quarter, because to their credit, they kept converting third and longs, but there were penalty after penalty after penalty called. And there were penalties after penalty after penalty called throughout the 4 quarters of the game that really felt like it hurt the ability to both offenses to really sort of find a rhythm. It made it difficult for both defenses to sort of kind of get off the field and sort of get the ball back to the offenses to kind of have a real ebb and flow to the game that sort of felt like it was warranted with the two teams and how the quality of offensive talent that they have on the field. So, I wish there would have been half as many penalties that were called. To some of them, there were holding calls that were away from play side that really didn't affect what was going on in the field. There was a lot of conferencing going on with the referees. There were some personal fouls that were called that felt like they were a little ticky-tack in terms of, was there a face mask grab, was it not? And it gave a real disjointed feel to the game that hurt both teams offensively. But nevertheless, both of these teams' defenses really showed out. Both teams really balled out defensively, and it was hard both teams were finally able to move the balls between the 20s, but once they got down close to red zone territory, there was just nothing. The cupboard was bare, because both of these defenses kind of set the tone and shut everything down. The game itself, for Sylmar, they played all right offensively in the first half. They bookended the half with 2 field goal drives because they weren't able to punch the ball into the end zone. San Fernando showed the kind of team that they were, because right after that 11-minute drive to begin the game, they took the ball right down the field and they scored a touchdown and answered back Sylmar to grab a 7-3 lead, which was something you wanted to see from a team that needed to really sort of continue to show you that they are a real threat to what Panorama and Kennedy are at the top of that league. And kudos to them for doing so. The drama in this game came down to the end. Sylmar trailing on the scoreboard 7-6. They're driving down the field. They're driving. They get down to about the 30 plus yard. They're down on the 25-yard line. They break a touch. We're inside of a minute to play. They break a touchdown run to give them the lead, or so we think. And the referees called it back on another penalty, a holding call that I didn't necessarily agree with. I didn't necessarily think that even if there was a hold, it affected the play itself. And it took Sylmar's touchdown off the board. They weren't able to finish the drive. Sylmar San Fernando gets it back. At this point, the air is out of the balloon for Sylmar. They break a long touchdown. They break a long run, sets up a touchdown to sort of end the game. The game ends 14-6. If you're San Fernando, you have to know that you sort of escaped that game. You can make the argument that Sylmar might have been on equal terms, if not the better team, for a good portion of that game. But hey, you don't give back W's. You don't give those back. And if you're Sylmar, you know, moral victories don't get you much. But I will say that the feeling coming out of this game is that both of these teams are not going to be teams that you want to see in the postseason, especially if you're talking about Sylmar. San Fernando, based on what they've done this year, they'll have some expectation of making a deep run when they get into the postseason. Sylmar's expectation may not be as high, but when you have guys on the field like Jace Mims and McDonald at quarterback, and when you have Will Clark who can break one at any given time, when you have a stout defense, this is a team that's going to be capable of breaking somebody's heart down the stretch here in the Valley Mission, and definitely when they get into the postseason. So, San Fernando, congratulations to them. They sort of keep themselves in the hunt in the Valley Mission. They've got a big one next week playing against Panorama. If they can win that game, it definitely throws the Valley Mission into disarray, and gives them a chance to still win the Valley Mission. But it was a great effort by both teams. It was a tough, hard-fought game, and both teams should come away from this feeling like they're in a good position to do something down the stretch of the season.
It definitely was one of those types of games, just really a bit of a slugfest. And I gotta say, it's like we were saying, it sets up for a very interesting last 3 weeks in the Valley Mission. If you ask me, I believe the storylines in the Valley Mission right now are a little more intriguing than the other leagues that we have. You know, West Valley League, until somebody beats them, Birmingham looks like they, you know, and this is not a knock on any of the teams that still have to play, but people were saying, oh, well, you know, who are the early challengers? Well, they beat the early challengers. So, and then over in the East Valley, you've got a couple teams left contending, but whenever you've got an undefeated team, like in the West and the East, and everyone else has multiple, at least one loss, it's becoming that much tighter, in the last 3 weeks. Whereas in the Valley Mission, there's a very interesting way it can go. Yes, Panorama is undefeated in league, and Kennedy is as well. You've got those two. San Fernando still says they have an argument to make. It's going to be interesting to watch. Right before we wrap it up, I don't have too much more to go into as far as player of the week or honorable mentions. I'm going to leave that to you guys this week. Who do you got? We'll go honorable mentions first.
I think for sure, if he's not one of our top 3, I think an honorable mention needs to be Jalen Sanders for that Elko Taft game.
Yeah, I agree. Jalen Sanders he's a good shout for honorable mention. I think there was a couple on the tap side as well. Devin Conroy put on the show on LA 36. I think he's going to grab the attention of some, as you know, being that he's a senior, he's going to grab the attention of some local schools around here. When you go out and throw for 315, four touchdowns, had an 80-yard touchdown. Legend Wilson also should get an honorable mention. 7 catches, 180 yards, 2 touchdowns in that game. But ultimately, it was a tough week to pick a single person. So I'm going to cop out. Because also I saw an Instagram comment that said we don't give this unit enough love. I'm going to go with Birmingham's front 7 and what they did to Isaiah Ramo this week. They did something that a lot of people aren't able to do. They repeated what they did last year when they faced Chatsworth, and that is they completely stymied a running game that even against 8 and 9 man boxes, they still tend to run people over. But this is the one team that Isaiah Ramo did not and has not been able to sort of figure out. They had guys all over the place who had spectacular games. Eddie Plaza had 3 tackle for losses. Mena Morales had 4 TFLs. Deneker Franco and Andy Bylon had 3 tackle for losses. This team has 16 TFLs in this game against Chatsworth. Not only could they not move the ball, they couldn't move forward in this game. So for this 1 week, I'm going to give my player of the week to the Birmingham front 7 because they had the most spectacularly dominant performance that we've seen anywhere in the city section this week. So my vote this week is going to be Birmingham's front 7. That way I don't have to have pod guys jumping in our mentions saying we don't talk about that defensive unit enough. Oh, we talk about the quarterbacks. Oh, we talk about Jayla. Oh, you guys ain't talking about us. Here you go, guys. You guys went out there against one of the more formidable run attacks in the entire city, and you made them look like a unit that had never played before. So Birmingham's front 7, you get your flowers this week from me.
Yeah, let's not
TFLs.
Let's not act like that's just us throwing them a bone. They deserve it. They absolutely deserve the credit and all their flowers because they've been doing this not just this week against Isaiah Ramo, but they've been doing it week in and week out against every team they've played.
Yeah, 16 tackles for loss is insane in a game. That tells you the story of how dominant a team was defensively in a game if you have 16 tackles for loss.
They have really kind of buckled down and leaned on their defense. And yeah, we haven't mentioned it enough. But here it is. This week, they're going out as our final mention, that Birmingham defense. Really, really just shutting down everybody. And with that, we say what we say every week. Thanks for watching. Thanks for your time. And we do this out of love for the Valley, love for all these kids, love for what they're trying to do, these programs, and just try to spread it as much as we can and shine a light on stories, programs, and things that really would otherwise probably go unnoticed. And so for us, it's all from the heart. It's all for love. And thank you again. As always, if you like what you see, hit the subscribe button, the like button. Ring the bell to get the notifications. And just, always thank you for your time.
Yeah, man, we headed down the stretch. We got 3 weeks left in the regular season. We're gonna be out here pumping these out for you guys and letting you know how all the drama unfolds and all these league championship pictures. So thank you guys again. Peace.
See you next week.